Make it now time 9:30. Yeah, you can session.
Yes, sir. Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. A very good morning to everyone here, esteemed guests, respected faculty, and fellow students. Today, we're all here to take part in a masterclass in data science project workflow. In this workshop, we will be learning to identify how to identify problem statements, tools, and finally, how to implement a fully fledged project in data science. Now, I would like to introduce today's guest speakers. Mr. Aritra Banerjee, who is a data scientist and a marketing analyst in Texas, USA. He's a data scientist who's graduated from the Indian School of Business with over 9.5 years of experience in business consulting, digital marketing, and web analytics and product management. The second speaker for today will be Mr. Arumugam, who has 9.5 years of IT experience performing the roles of data analyst, Hadoop and Spark developer in various projects. Use RDDs and Spark streaming for processing streaming data and integration with NoSQL databases for huge volumes of data. Now I would like to call Dr. Stalin Alex, the head of Department of Data Science, to say a few words and flag off the event.
Yeah. Thank you, Meghna. It's a very nice presentation. And Meghna, you can introduce about Arumugam sir, so that both are sharing the session. So first, okay, you can introduce about him also. Okay, fine. Let me tell you, no problem. So it's a very pleasure for me to have minutes with you. And I congratulate Meghna. She's a person who is a backbone of this event. So she has undergone a lot of things, and she organized very well. She had, she had a team, and she will name all the teams who are all part of this workshop. Who are all the students? They worked behind all this poster design and organizing the event. During the vote of session, she will tell about all their names. Right. Before that, I will take only 2 minutes to introduce about Arumugam and Mr. Adira, so that you can know that why we are conducting this kind of workshop. This is many of the students, they don't know how to do projects on data science. So this is the eye open for you. What are all the projects are available and how we can do the projects in the domain of data science. So Mr. Arumugam and Mr. Aritra Banerjee, they will guide you in the proper manner. So please be attentive this session. Whatever the doubts you are having, please ask them at the end of the session. And I will tell you one thing, they are the famous YouTuber. Mr. Arumugam, he is running a YouTube channel. It's a very famous YouTube channel. He will tell about his YouTube channel also. He posted lots and lots of videos about data science. You can watch his channel. Definitely, it will be useful for you. Right. So I thank you, Arumugam sir and Aritra Banerjee sir, because they accepted for sharing their knowledge to you people. Because they happily accepted. I told them about our data science students and AI students and our university. So they happily accepted. So it is a very pleasure for me to have them. Sir, I'm handovering the session to the guest. Please take care of the session, sir.
Sure. Thanks, sir. Thanks, Stalin, sir, and I believe Meghna for arranging this session. So I believe I'm audible to everyone. Sir, I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, super. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about what we are working. So this class, why we first of all why we wanted to present and what we are going to present. I think already you guys heard the introduction about me. I have around 10 years of experience in totally data, and initially I was working as a SQL developer. Later I moved into big data and Spark and streaming, and I worked as data analyst also. So currently I'm working in Texas, US, for last 2 years. I've been as a senior data engineer. That's what you can say. So I just wanted to start with one simple difference between data engineer and data analyst. So today you are going to like completely talk about data science. So what is the difference between data engineer and data science and data scientist, which you are going to see. So data engineer is just data is lying around everywhere. Like you would say, like Facebook, YouTube, everything is generating a lot of data. So data engineer's role is just to get the data from all the sources and put it to somewhere where you can just use it. So that's where data engineer's primary role. So this is kind of like a developer kind of a thing. So we develop taking the data and pushing it to somewhere, all these manual steps. So on top of the data engineer work, data scientist work starts. So they will just do all this fancy stuff which you're going to see. And before that, like I just wanted to talk, since everybody's I believe final year student, I want to talk about like the job market and what's in the industry. Okay, so data, as you may already know, the world's first company, like the total biggest companies ITs like Facebook, Google, they don't charge you at all. Like correct, Facebook never charge you. Okay, when you're posting something, are you paying something like, okay, you take this 1 rupee for one post or one share? No, right? So everything is happen is you are the product, like you are the product of the, like you are being sold on the product. So how that is happened means back end, wherever you are seeing, like let's say, just say you're scrolling in Instagram, right? So where you are looking, where your eyes are going, that's where like that data has to be brought back to the backend system, and that has to be analyzed in order to make money. So that's where most of the job. And like initially there were big players who were doing that, but now everybody is in the game. So data is like next oil. That's what popularly everybody says. So with that, I wanted to today's session will be entirely handled by Aritra, because I'm a data engineer myself. Like I know data, how data comes and goes, but Aritra is an expert in data like science, and he has like 10 years of experience. And you won't believe, yesterday night he was working till 4 a.m., like 5 a.m. just to get some data science project. So Aritra, you can start the session, and you'll feel free to reach out to me. We'll be sharing our WhatsApp number and our YouTube channel at the end of the session. Always feel free to reach out to me for any kind of guidance. Yeah, Aritra.
Yeah, thank you, Armugam. Thank you for the warm words, and thank you, Dr. Stalin, for giving us this opportunity to talk to your final year students. Just looking at the number of aspiring data scientists fills us with joy. And with that being said, I will share my screen. And is there a way that I can share my screen and walk you guys through the small PPT that we have presented?
Stalin sir?
Yeah, I think I'll be able to share now. Yeah, just a second.
Okay.
Great. So let me know if everybody is able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Left side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good morning to everybody. Today's session is basically, you can call it a boot camp. We'll talk about data science and analytics, and what data science is basically, and what are the various kinds of projects, various kinds of work that you can do in data science. And I will, from time and again, I'll draw from my own experience. I've been in the field for, it's been close to 10 years now, working completely with data since the beginning of my career. And time and again, I'll draw from my own experience. I'll talk to you about what are the difficulties I faced as a data scientist in the market, and what are the things that you can expect to come across if you choose to be a data scientist going forward in your career, right? So I would request all the participants to be interactive during the session, ask me a lot of questions, because I don't want to be the only one talking during the session. And I'm sure you guys must have a lot of questions. Being a students of the final year engineering, you guys must already be having a lot of questions regarding the job market and whatnot. So do ask me, utilize this time to ask me and Armugam as many questions that you have. I will keep monitoring the chat section from time and again. I'll pause, in between my presentation, I'll pause for a couple of minutes just to to see if you have any questions, if somebody has posted anything on the chat section. So feel free to post your questions on chat, or if you want, you can feel free to, just unmute yourself and ask me the questions directly, right? So with that being said, let's start off today's session. So just a brief introduction about me. I think Meghna already covered it. My name is Aritra Banerjee. I am an engineer, and I graduated from West Bengal University of Technology. And post that, back in 2016, I graduated out of Indian School of Business. I have a total years of experience, which is close to 10 years now, currently working with EXL Analytics as a senior consultant, wherein I manage an entire team of marketing analysts, and we do cutting edge marketing analytics work for one of our US based clients. Right? So today's agenda, first and foremost, we'll look at some common, very, very common use cases from our daily lives. Some things which you might, some people already might have experienced. I'm sure most of you people have experienced these use cases. A majority of you would already be knowing the implications and how these use cases come into be. And for the remaining few, I think it will be kind of an eye opener. Then we would move to the use of data science and analytics, starting from the origin of data, how data is being processed in business. What is data science? What is data science and analytics? What is the life cycle of an analytics project? And what are the different kinds of projects that you can do in data science and analytics? Starting from here again is the section where I'll draw heavily from my experience on the subject. And lastly, to finish off, a little couple of pointers on how you can become a data scientist, what are the skills you would require, and why should you be even considering this particular field as a career path for you, right? And then we'll open the floor up to some question and answer, some Q&As from the audience, which we would, Arumugam and me, we would be happy to answer. Right? So with that being said, I will start with a very, very, a story which is very dear to me, and I start most of my sessions with this particular story. So this story dates back to a couple of decades. It was before the 2000, before this century, actually, back in 1990s. So there was a supermarket chain based out of US, who had newly hired a new marketing analyst, or a marketing strategist, you might say, right? So the role of this particular person was solely to increase the sales of the supermarket, right? And he implemented a lot of new strategies. He implemented a lot of ideas to increase their marketing and increase their sales. One of those is what we are going to talk about today. So one of those famous, or you may call infamous, decisions of his was to analyze the purchasing pattern of women who were pregnant. So what he and his team saw, that women who were pregnant, most of them, they have a similar kind of shopping, what do you say, experience, you can say. So let's say in the first 3 months, these women, they tend to buy something simple, let's say strawberries, and along with strawberries they would tend to buy a carton of milk, or maybe a slice of bread, right? And in the second trimester, they may most of them would buy some maternity clothes, or something resembling a maternity coat, not even as close as a maternity clothes, something like, let's say bell bottom pants or something like that, right? And at the end of their pregnancy cycle, at the end of in the third trimester, they would inevitably come and buy baby supplies, right? So maybe tissue dispensers, or baby wipes, or talcum powders and whatnot, right? So what they analyzed is basically at least 90 to 95% of women who were pregnant, they started off with buying as simple as items as, strawberries and a carton of milk and maybe a slice of bread at the start of their trimester, right? And eventually at the end of their pregnancy cycle, they ended up buying all these, pregnancy related stuff or all the, new baby stuff. So what they did is, as soon as they, came across women who were buying these kind of stuff, they started advertising them. They started targeting them with, offers for baby products. And it so happened that many of these women, they hardly even knew that they were pregnant. They hardly knew themselves. And there was some women, who had not even disclosed the fact with their family. They had not informed their husband. They had not informed their partners, right? So, and during those times, during those days, advertising was mostly done via direct email. Sorry, not direct email, via direct mail, right? You have hard mail, postal mail. So it happened that many many such these mails were not received by these women, and instead they were received by their husbands or their partners, and who were shocked that how come this particular supermarket is targeting us with baby products, right? So it came as a shock to them as well, and they actually lodged a legal case. They actually took legal action against this particular company, saying that they somehow have their lives bugged, or they somehow have been spying on people's lives. So in the end, this particular marketing strategy did not work, and because data privacy is a very, very big issue even nowadays. But previously, back in the day, it was data was not that readily available. Right. So this is the story of one such case in how analytics affects our daily lives. So moving on, the second portion is something which we use on a daily basis, right? We use Google, and couple of products of Google which we use on a daily basis are Gmail and Google Photos, right? So guys, if you are not talking, or if you are if you don't have any questions, I would request the others to kindly keep themselves on mute. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about Google, right? So there are two products of Google which I would say around at least 85 to 90% of us, or I would go to the extent of saying 95% of us use, that is Gmail and Google Photos, right? So you guys must have seen that recently, not recently, I mean 2 to 3 years back, Google had Gmail had started classifying their inboxes into three different types. One is the primary inbox, the other is the inbox which contains all your social emails, and the last inbox is the one which contains your promotional emails, right? Apart from this, they also had a fourth inbox. Can somebody
Adira sir, you can unmute, sir.
I like this subject. The way handling is not correct. We want to change the
Adira sir?
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so the question that I was asking to the entire group is, there are, I am sure, over here I've showed three different types of inboxes which Google provides: primary, social, and promotions. There's actually a fourth. Does anybody know what is the fourth inbox called? You guys can post your answers on the chat, or you can unmute yourself and tell the answer as well.
Spam.
Spam. Yes, that's correct. Very good. Very good. So, another question, a follow-up question on that. Who basically decides, what email should come into your primary inbox, what email should come into your land in your social inbox, promotional inbox, and which emails should be considered as spam? Any ideas?
Sir, for social and promotional emails, like they might have white listed some sites, like if something is coming from Facebook and kind of thing, Facebook, Instagram, it would be social. And for spam, they could have deployed a machine learning model.
That is correct. They kind of have, this is called a classification problem, basically, right? So basically, when you are getting, a lot of, similar kind of items, you need to classify them into correct buckets, right? So that is what is happening over here. All the important emails which you tend to open mostly in your, day in, day out life, those will come land in your primary inbox. The ones which, are from social media platforms, let's say, and you can see over here, right? This is a snapshot of my Gmail account, and all the Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the emails from these three platforms have landed in the social, inbox. And promotions will basically contain all the advertisements and all the, marketing emails and all this. Right? And apart from that, the spam filter, that's usually called, that is, a machine learning algorithm, you can say. It's Google's proprietary algorithm. We don't know exactly what kind of algorithm they use, but we can safely assume that it's a machine learning algorithm that filters out all the different kinds of emails which can be termed as phishing emails or spam, right? So this basically is a classification problem or a classification example which we encounter on a daily basis, right? Now coming to Google Photos. Now you might have seen that whenever you open Google Photos and you go to library, Google will arrange your photos in specific groups, right? Be it by the person who is present in the photo, or by the location, or by an event, or maybe by a type of animal, or maybe by buildings or cars. Now you will see specific folders into which these photos have been grouped, right? So can anybody from the audience tell me what kind of an algorithm is being used over here? Okay, somebody is saying sorting. Sorting is okay. Can you be a little bit more specific? I see algorithm to classify the sorting, classification, recognition, some kind of classification. Anybody else?
Sir, a logistic regression or a deep learning model with each word as a data input, and at last they can use sigmoid.
Logistic
Classified.
regression with a deep learning model. Whenever I hear the words deep learning, I get a little bit scared. It's not as don't need to go into that kind of deep depth. It's basically, you can say it's basically a clustering problem. It's basically a clustering algorithm, right? So you have again, you have a lot of photos. You're basically sorting them, or you are basically grouping them or clustering them or segmenting them, right, into smaller kind of buckets, right? Okay. Now the last example which I wanted to talk about is again something which we frequently interact with our daily lives: Netflix and Amazon, right? So I believe most of you over here might be using Netflix, and again, almost all of us are certainly using Amazon, right? So you must have seen these kind of uh, specifically these kind of images in when you open your Netflix account, or when you open your Amazon page. You must have seen specifically that trending, a section called trending now, the shows or the films which are highly in demand or popular, or some shows that you might like on appearing on Netflix automatically. Similarly, on Amazon, you must have seen that, okay, you've bought something. You've bought maybe the first part of a book, and Amazon is showing you the second part of the book. Or maybe it may be another example that you have bought a camera, a new DSLR, and Amazon is showing you whenever you log into your Amazon account, you are being displayed an ad for a lens, right? So again, what kind of an algorithm is being used over here? If anybody can take a guess.
Recommendation systems.
Recommendation system. Okay, that's correct. That's correct. Right. So we have a pretty intelligent bunch over here. So that's good to see. When I was in college, I did not have any idea about what recommendation engine was, but that's good to see that people, are so ahead nowadays. That's good. Okay. So yeah, this is a recommendation system, and it's a common knowledge in the industry that recommendation system for Netflix is kind of the industry standard or higher. That's basically the gold standard in the industry. Right? Nobody can make a recommendation system as good as Netflix, right? So that is a couple of examples or use cases that I wanted to talk about. Use cases of analytics and how it affects our day in, day out lives. So with that being said, why are we actually talking about all these things? And what is the point, right? So this is because, as Armugam was telling you, there has been actually over the last few years, there has been an explosion in the data, right? So data is basically everywhere, right? So I've just listed down a few facts over here regarding data. Around 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are being produced every day, and close to 1.7 megabyte per second of data per second per person of data is being generated currently in 2021. That's a lot of data, right? Data is being generated by as simple an activity as you clicking on a particular link, in Facebook, or clicking on opening an email. Even these kind of simple actions, these kind of trivial actions, they are also generating some kind of data, and be assured that this data is used in some way or the other by some company or the other to make some kind of decision about you, right? Now, why is data all of a sudden so important? Was this kind of data being generated previously as well? No, this kind of data was not there in the last at least 20 years back, because we did not have access to the internet so so easily. We did not have access to such high speed internet, and also apart from that, we did not have access to technologies that can store this amount of data, right? So with the advent of big data platforms, with the advent of stuff like technologies like Hadoop, Spark, Pig, Hive, so many things, we are able to store the data, process the data, and generate the insights out of data very easily nowadays, right? So let's just see how is data being generated, right? So data is being generated through almost all the activities that we are doing. So currently our daily driver is our mobile phones, right? So we almost cannot live without personally, I would say that I am either on my laptop or on my mobile phone at least during the entire period of my time when I'm awake during the day. Apart from the fact when I'm sleeping, I don't use them. But when I'm awake, 99% of the time I'm either on my phone or on my laptop. And that is the kind of, that is a trend that we have. And that is essential because, we are, all of us are connected in some way or the other, right? So this interconnection of things, which is, you might say the Internet of Things, IoT, which is a very important term nowadays, that generates data. So data is being generated through any kind of activities that you do from your mobile, any kind of activity that you do from your laptop. You have data flowing in through your smart homes, right? Nowadays you have devices like Alexa or Google Nest and these kind of things. right? So you generate data through them. You have smart cars like Tesla, and you have cars which are being, connected to your mobile phone or connected through an app, right? And they are generating some kind of data. You have social media, right? You have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Pinterest, you have LinkedIn. Anything and everything that you do is generating some kind of data, right? So let's see, so basically you go into Facebook, you comment on a picture that constitutes an activity that generates some data. You go into an Instagram, upload something that constitutes an activity that contributes to data generation, right? So this is how all the kind of data is being generated. And let's take a look at how much data is being generated on a daily level by social media. So it's uh, it's greater than 500 million tweets that are going out per day currently, right, in Twitter. Over 120 million of users are generating some kind of insights or some kind of posts in LinkedIn. Over 50 million photos are being currently uploaded in Instagram, and and over 2.5 billion of contents are being created currently in Facebook. So that is the veracity, the velocity, and the variety, basically 3 V's of data. That is the kind of data that is being generated through social media on a daily basis, right? So I won't waste much time in these kind of things, because I know most of you are aware of this. So let's jump into the section next, which is might interest you. So how are these data being processed in business, right? So in business, there's a term that we use that's called ETL, right? And most of you might be familiar with the term already. It's called extract, transform, and load. So extracting is basically drawing out data from all the various sources that are available to you. Transformation leads to some kind of slicing and dicing that you need to do as per your industry standards, and then the data gets loaded into a particular database or a data lake, right? So let's talk about a simple business where let's talk about a simple retail business, right? So a retail business, how many kinds of data can a retail business have? First and foremost, it can have the sales data from its retail outlets, that's the brick and mortar stores, right? Secondly, it can have sales data from its e-commerce platform if it has any, right? Online purchases and whatnot. Thirdly, it can have its inventory data, how much stock it has in place, all the warehouse information. It can have its employees data, and it can have its customers data, right? So these are the kind of 5 sources of data that the company can draw from, right? So they extract all the information from these sources. In the transformation section, they apply the necessary transformation required as per the company standards, and then they load the data into a particular data warehouse or a data lake, right? Nowadays we call it a data lake because it contains data from various kind of sources. That's why it's a lake, similar to a lake wherein you will find a lot of different kinds of fish, right? So similarly, in a data lake, you will see data from all different kinds of data sources. Right? Now, what are businesses doing with this kind of data? They are engaging in business intelligence, right? So basically, building reports, BI reports, we call them, right? Developing KPIs, key performing indices, to see what maybe talking about the retail business, what kind of marketing channels are drawing in how much amount of sales, what are how good are affiliates channels doing, how good are our search and shopping channels doing, what is our let's say click-through ratio of our emails, these kind of reports. Then they also use this data to drive specific strategic decisions, like should I expand into that portion of the business, should I acquire some new small businesses, should I bring in a new line of products, and all these kind of things. And last but not the least, they also use this kind of data for predictions, predicting how much their sales will be next year, predicting how much inventory they need to manage for the next financial year, and so on, right? So this, in in a very small nutshell, this is basically, what how data is being generated and how data is currently being processed in the industry. So I'll just pause for a couple of minutes over here. It's been me that has been talking since the last 10 minutes. So I'll just open the forum up to the students if you guys have any questions till now. Feel free to use the chat section of the meeting or feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. These are mostly, things which you might be already familiar with, but I just wanted to scratch the surface or brush the surface before going into the more detailed stuff.
Yeah, so just all these stuffs you guys already know, or like all these stuffs are new. Just wanted to know so that in the next upcoming hours we can utilize based on that.
Sir, here.
Yeah, there are 3 batches of students here. So a few the final year students, we know all of this, but the other 2 batches, it's a little doubtful that they know all of this. So
Okay.
Understood. So I think we have got something in the chat. Okay. So you guys are already studying these topics on in data mining. Okay, cool. Great. That is good to know. So let's, in that case, let's move on to the next section, which is basically the definition of data science, right? So data science, in my words, and this definition is totally from what I have experienced. Data science is basically a collection of scientific thinking, statistical methodologies, and using innovative technologies to extract any kind of insights and knowledge from data, right? So now that you have built this data warehouse, which we were seeing in the previous slides, you have built this data warehouse, you built this data lake, right? All your data is sitting over there, but you don't know how to use that. You don't know how to, you may have, billions and billions of rows in your tables. You may have, gigabytes of data stored in your data lake, but you don't know how to leverage that power, right? So that is where your data science comes in. It uses specific technologies, it uses specific algorithms, and uses specific, kind of analytical thinking to answer business questions, to derive insights from the data. It specifically tries to, tackle specific business problems with the data that you have in hand. So that basically is what data science is, right? And talking about now, this is where the things get interesting. Talking about the life cycle of a data science project, first and foremost, you have identifying the problem identification. So unless and until you have a problem to solve, your data science skills are of no use, right? And believe me, there will till the time that there are businesses around, there will always be some kind of the other problem that needs to be solved by using data, right? So first and foremost, you need to identify the problems. You need to understand what the issue is, and you need to understand what the business is targeting on doing, what they want to be done, right? That's the first part of it. The second part goes into exploring what kind of data you have, right? So let's say you want to, let's say you're working for a bank, and you are tasked on you're tasked with designing an algorithm which basically will which basically will classify customers into 2 groups, whether to provide loans to these customers or not. They will basically classify the customers as yes, they're good for loans, or no, they're not good to be provided loans, right? So that is the business problem identification. The next thing that you need to do is you need to explore the data at hand, right? First and foremost, you need to go into your own data warehouse, your own data lake, right? That's the first-hand data that you'll have, and you need to see whether that particular data, whether the data that you have available, is it enough for you to solve your problem, right? If it is enough, good enough, go ahead. If it is not enough, you need to look for secondary sources, right? Secondary sources of data might be available, freely in the market, or it might be a paid source, right? So identifying the correct, after problem identification, identifying the correct source of data, that is also very, very important while solving data science problems. Now, let's say that you have identified what data that you need. The next step comes data preparation. And in this particular segment, sorry, what you need to do is you need to slice and dice the data. You need to filter out all the data that you do not require and keep only that amount of data which you require. You need to, you might need to do some data massaging, like handling missing values and removing outliers and all these things you might already have studied. So these are the kind of things, data wrangling and preparation, EDA, right, which goes into the data preparation phase, right? Now moving towards the fourth stage, that is where the interesting work happens, right? That is where your analysis goes in. That is where you create you create a hypothesis, and then you build your data, or you build a model which basically will either reject that hypothesis or it will fail to reject that hypothesis. So basically your analysis techniques and your analytical thinking ability goes into this particular phase. After that, and this is probably the most important phase, after that comes drawing insights and providing recommendation to business, right? So let's say that you have going back to the example that we were discussing about, right? You're working for a bank who has requested you to build a model which will classify whether they want to give a person loan or not, right? So now you have done all the data exploration preparation, you have built a model. Now comes explaining the model to the business, right? So this is why am I saying that this is the most important phase, is because it's very difficult for all of us over here are technical person, right? We come from a technical background, we understand terms and technologies that are every day are thrown about here and there, right? But for a business person, that's very, very difficult to understand, right? So if you say that, okay, I have built a model, I have built a let's say a normal logistic regression to solve this problem, and my efficiency of the model is 95%, right? Let's say the area under the you say the area under the ROC curve is 95%. You say that the false positive rate and false negative rates are very low. So this model is good to go. The business person will say, what the hell are you talking about? I don't understand. Tell me in simple words, right? So this is where you need to draw upon your domain knowledge. You need to draw upon your business knowledge and translate the findings, translate the insights into business terms, which can be communicated easily to business, right? And this particular phase, this particular phase is the phase which is mostly overlooked by us data scientists. So we are mostly interested in solving the problems, but we are not interested in implementing these solutions, right? So as soon as we have built one model, we jump ship and we try to solve another problem by building another model, or let's say by doing another analysis. But we don't focus on how we can communicate our findings to the business and thereby implement our solution. And that is one of the reasons why till date many business users, they are reluctant to implement these machine learning or data science solutions in their business. They still go with their old tried and tested approach, right? So insights drawing and providing recommendation, communicating to business is probably the most important part of your data science project. And once that is done, finally, once you get the approval from the business that, okay, fine, whatever you have done, we are okay with it. Whatever business rules that you have built by using your analytical capabilities, we are good with them. We are good to implement them. Go ahead and productionize them. Go ahead and move them to production, right? That is what you do in the final phase. You implement your solution and you work on maintaining that solution, right? So this is basically the entire life cycle of a project that you can do in data science and analytics. Right? So again, I will pause for a little bit here, a minute or so, to see if anybody has any questions.
So on a
Yeah,
smaller
please go ahead.
scale, like when we're trying to pick a project for our final year, for example, do you suggest picking the data set first, and then building the problem around it, or picking a problem and finding a data set for that?
That is actually a very good question, and you can actually do it both the ways, right? So whatever is suitable to you, you can do. But uh, for your final year project, what I would say is that the most convenient thing for you to do is to pick up the data set first, right? Because data sets are readily available in nowadays market, right? And however, I will not deter you from choosing a problem first and then looking for its solution. But for your only for specific for your final year project, because the time period is less, right? What would happen is, if you pick the problem first, you might not have time to explore all these sources available for all the sources which have data available for you to solve that problem, right? So you can go the other way around. You can pick the data first, which are available from various sources, as we'll talk about in the coming slides. And from that data set, you can try to derive a problem and then try to solve it using your analysis or your modeling.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay, I think I have a question on the chat. Where are these huge data is stored? Okay, so we have specific terms called data warehouse or data lakes. They are kind of databases, right? Similar to databases which you might have used for your projects, but in the industry, they are scaled up to store billions and billions and billions of data. In not even in GBs, we store data in TBs. So these databases are of various types. You have you can have a relational database, something like Redshift, Amazon Redshift, or Teradata, or you can have a big data platforms like Hadoop, HDFS, S3, all these kind of databases which you can use to store data. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, do they store the old data? Like, is there any time, like only 5 years of data they will store?
No, there is no such time limit on how long data is stored. That basically varies from organization to organization, right? And it depends also from domain to domain, right? In banking sectors, you can have data for even 20 to 25 years back data that needs to be stored for regulatory purposes, right? That's basically the law that you need to store this amount of data. However, in other businesses like say retail or e-commerce, they are where they're dealing mostly with sales data and inventory data. They might store data only for last 3 to 4 years, not more than that, because they don't need to go that back in history, right? So it basically varies from domain to domain, company to company. There's standards laid out, but that's basically depends on the company.
Okay, sir.
Okay, anything else, guys? Any other questions?
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
so what should be the ideal end product of the project?
The ideal end product of any data science project is basically coming up with a solution to a particular problem, right? The problem can be as simple as you need to build a mechanism to better target your customers, right? Or the problem can be as simple even it can be a complicated problem like building a chatbot as well, right? But nowadays, I don't know, for you guys, chatbot building might be a simple solution, but in our days, chatbot building was a pretty difficult solution, right? So they can basically just pick up, you need to pick up a problem and you need to solve it using data. That is the essence of any data science project.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, now let's move on to the next section. And in the next section, we'll basically be talking about a few projects which I myself have done in my career over the last 10 years. And I will try to relate them to all the phases of the data science project life cycle that we have just seen. All right. So to start off, just let's take a look at the different segments or the different types of projects, types of work that you can do in data science. So I have broadly classified this into three categories. This is not a standard classification. This is basically based on my experience, the different types of work that I have done in the past 10 years. I have tried to very closely classify it into three segments. First and foremost is the segment which I would call data mining. Right? Data mining is, and this is the most basic segment, and this particular segment, this particular skill set is currently the most in demand in the market. Right? I would say data mining along with storytelling. Right? And if you guys want to be data scientists, the starting point would be to become good in these 2 points. Right? So data mining is basically going deep into the data and trying to find a reason for a particular question. Right? So let's say the question can be something like your the head of marketing can come up to you and say that the sales have not been good this year. Can you just find out why have the sales dropped? Right? Or we are not selling a particular kind of product as well as we were doing last year or even last month. Can you just take a look at the data and tell us why that's happening? So in these kind of scenarios, in these kind of projects, what you need to do is you need to get your hands dirty with SQL and maybe like with scripting languages like Python, depending upon the kind of environment that you're working on. Right? So it basically requires you to explore your data. Hence, I've written exploratory data analysis. It and also requires you to go into the deep dive and go into the root of the problems. So I've written root cause analysis also, right? And these kind of analysis, we call them in the industry, we call them as diagnostic or root RCA or diagnostic analysis, right? So basically, it's to answer a particular question that any business might pose, and the questions can be as simple as hey, why are my sales down this month, right? So you need to get your hands dirty with SQL, deep dive into the data, and find the answer to that. The second portion is storytelling. Right? Storytelling is basically communicating to the business about what had happened, right? About communicating to the business of what was going to happen, right? And that is constitutes building graphical representation, building kind of stitching a story with your charts and graphs, and being able to communicate your insights, being able to communicate the what happened or the what if, these kind of questions to the business. And the skills required for this kind of work is basically it relies heavily on visualizing tools and technologies like Tableau, Power BI, and sometimes even SQL to pull the data, right? And the third and final piece where and this is the piece which attracts most of the newbies in data science, is the predictive analytics, right? So here comes the statistics, your machine learning algorithms, your modeling, and deep learning, neural network, TensorFlow, and whatnot, right? So this is basically the hardcore analytics that you do. So basically, you answer questions like, can you tell me how much? Can you predict how much sales am I going to have next year? Or can you classify or can you build a model where you can accept or reject a particular loan applicant? Or can you Can you build a model which will predict the amount of premium that I need to charge for an insurance policy? These kind of questions basically that get answered with for in this particular segment. And the skills that you require are, Python, R, machine learning, statistical modeling, and maybe neural networks, deep learning, whatever strokes your fancy, basically, right? But from my experience, till date, I would say 90% of the work that I have done, and 90% of the work which most data scientists do, which is currently out there in the industry, are related heavily on data mining and storytelling, right? Because if you are not able to, slice and dice data, and if you're not able to, think analytically on your feet, and if you're not able to extract any kind of useful information from your data, and if you're not able to represent them, if you're not able to communicate the same to business in their own terms, right? There's no, there'll be no demand for you in the market, no matter how good data, no matter how good a regression model that you build, no matter how good a decision tree that you build, unless and until you are good at the first 2 points, there will be no demand for you in any of the markets, right? So whenever you are, I because this is why I'm harping on this so much, is because I've come across so many people who are, want to become data scientists, and the first thing that they focus on is the predictive analytics. They, mug up statistics, they mug up machine learning algorithms, and when I ask them a couple of questions about SQL, they fall flat on their faces. Right? So this is something that I would request all of you to avoid. Start with the basics. Start with being able to mine data, writing good SQL queries, querying well in SQL, or writing good Python code, being good in Tableau, then basically being able to solve a problem, being able to think analytically. Be good at these things first. Post that, you can take up the machine learning and you can take up the predictive analytics part. Not to discourage you from going there, but take it one step at a time. Right? Currently, as I was saying, out of all the projects that I have done, 80 to 85% of the projects have been in the first 2 categories, and only hardly 10 to 15% of the projects, I would say, fall in the third category, right? So guys, any questions till now? Anything that you want to share, or anything that you want to?
How are you creating the machine learning models, modeling ones up? Like we need to show like a software, like like hardware also.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't get you. Can you please come again?
Ma'am, how sir, how to show like a machine learning models?
How to show a machine learning model? You mean to the
like
business?
a software or similar, or both, like hardware and software?
Can you tell me about what hardware are you talking about in machine learning? Have you come across any hardware specifically?
A software is also there, like, but with the help of that only we can show, sir. Like in OpenCV, we use like image processing with the help of like our own cameras of laptop. Then we can access using our own hardware also.
Yeah, just to confirm if I've got your question correct, you are trying to understand how you can, showcase your machine learning model to the business. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, you don't showcase your machine learning model to your business as a whole, right? Whenever you're building a model, or whenever you're doing any kind of work, your work starts with identifying a problem, right? So you need to go up to the business and tell them that, okay, this is how I've solved your problem, and this is the output of your problem, and this is what I've done. They will not be interested if you've deployed a machine learning model, or if you've deployed a 2-line code, if you've deployed an if else statement. They will definitely not care about that, because they don't understand that, right? So you don't need to go up to them and say that, okay, this is my 100 lines of code, and this is the machine learning model that I've built. No, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that at all. What you need to do is basically understand the problem that they have, right? And try to solve that. And in solving that, If you have deployed a machine learning model, fair enough. But you don't need to go and tell them that I've built a machine learning model. You can, but they probably won't be interested. They will be interested in how well that you have been able to solve their problem.
How are we
Right.
going to deploy that machine learning model, sir?
So to deploy a machine learning model, again, it depends from organization to organization. So I'm to talk about our current organization. What we do in our current project, we have a very simple setup. We don't use cloud technologies, or we don't use advanced features like TensorFlow or Keras or anything like that. Right? We have very basic machine learning models which we have embedded in our Python code, right? And we have scheduled these Python jobs to run through Windows Task Schedulers. It's as simple as that, right? It depends on basically, I'm pretty sure, you will be seeing a lot of videos on YouTube on, how to correctly deploy machine learning models, how to, ML ops, which is, equivalent to DevOps. But trust me, take it simple. Most of the businesses nowadays, they don't fancy very complicated solutions. They like easy solutions. So what we do currently is we use Python. We have our Python code, which kind of hits our SQL databases, extracts data out of them, stores them into data frames, and we use these data frames as data to feed into any kind of machine learning model that we use. And there are very few ML models that we are currently deploying, believe me, right? Because they don't.
So like we say, like
Yeah.
Bitcoin prediction by that native base, native base theorem, like algorithms. Then it should be this a machine learning model, sir.
Yeah, definitely. But how many companies need that? That's the question. How many companies need to predict Bitcoins? Very few, right? Probably who are investing in Bitcoins, right? And most of them are not. That's what I'm saying. Companies are, see, the questions that businesses have are very simple. They are mostly what are most businesses concerned with. Just answer me this. You're running a business. Let's say you're running a restaurant, right? You're running a restaurant. What would be your number one priority? What would be your number one goal while you're running
Customer satisfaction.
No, that's not your number one goal.
So generate more revenue.
Exactly. Customer satisfaction is not your number one goal. For any business, generating revenue and generating profits is the number one goal. So 99.99% of the businesses will come to you as, if you are working as data scientist, 99% of the business will come to you and ask that, okay, why are my sales not going up? Right? Yeah.
So which machine learning model is most famous in our area, sir? Like,
that is a very actually ambiguous question. There are a lot of machine learning models, and it's very difficult to classify which one is famous and which one is not. Basically the model which solves your problem, that is the most famous model to you. It can be a simple regression, it can be a logistic regression, it can be a decision tree regressor, decision tree classifier, it can be as complex as a GNN or an R, right?
So like how will get this, like I've said about like stock price, like a Bitcoin prediction we have said using a native base or something like that. Sir, how this can be taken as like a final year project, sir? Like how people will believe that with that little bit of Python code we have done in like Jupyter notebook.
See, I would personally, this is a personal choice. Any kind of stock market prediction, any kind of any kind of stock market prediction using machine learning is kind of is something which we call as a hoax. It doesn't really work. But
so I'm saying like any machine model, sir, not that, sir. Any other.
Understood. So basically, basically what you can do is, look at the current, there might be certain currently available models in market as well, right? So let's say you have built a model. Let's say you have said that you have built a naive based model, so right? Or
Yes.
what is, yeah, okay. So how you can utilize this as your final year project is basically your, your kind of a bar of reference should be the currently deployed models in the market, right? And so basically, again, this also starts with a problem. This also starts with a problem. You need to identify the problem first. Let's say the problem is that the current algorithms that are there in the market, which predict your Bitcoin's valuation in future, they provide you with an accuracy of only 70%, right? Now you are trying to build a model which provides a better accuracy than that. So that should be your problem statement, correct? And when you build a model which actually does a job which is better than the existing models, you can basically kind of publish a white paper on that, and even you can patent that algorithm for yourself, right? And that will be
So
a final
where
year
can
project.
they publish this white paper? So like
There are a
we
lot of
the
journals.
newspaper or that.
There are a lot of journals which wherein you can publish. Like there's, off the top of my mind, IEA JET or something like that. There's a journal for that. But you can, I think for public paper publishing, the best person to contact would be your HOD, right? He will be
So
the
like we
correct
can't
person.
publish a research paper according and we give also solution to that thing also.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Sir, like I should like publish that paper which that problem was telling, sir. Like I should publish a paper for that, and afterwards we that gave us some code of like for that. How we gonna do this?
I am not able to understand your question. Actually, can you take some time to frame that and ask me?
Sir, what kind of project should a beginner do for students in second and third?
That's a good question. I will definitely come to that. We have a couple of slides dedicated to that in the next section, right? Okay, so I think we have only 20 minutes. So let's quickly jump to the next section, right? Let me talk about a couple of projects which I have done in my past few years. So, and I will talk about projects which belong to all three kinds of these three segments, right? So first project is our root cause analysis project, which I did, right? So this the problem that we were trying to solve over here is that we were working for an e-commerce client who had reported a loss from revenue from one of their digital marketing channels, right? So in digital marketing there are a lot of channels where you market your products, right? You have affiliate channel, you have display media, you have social media, email marketing, and so on. So they specifically saw that one of their channels was not performing as well as it was doing in the previous year, right? So they came to us and they asked us to provide a solution for this. And the data that we had was basically the sales data from all the digital marketing channels. So we kind of sliced and diced the data, defined the metrics on which we were going to do the analysis, and performed a year-over-year comparison of sales across channels. And also we dove deep into the attribution models, the marketing attribution models, the marketing mix models, which basically assign sales to all these marketing channels. And at the end, what we actually found is that the client had run promotions in the previous year, due to which the number of orders last year were less, but sorry, the number of orders were more, and that contributed to a higher sales in last year compared to this year. So we recommended them that you can run a similar kind of analysis this year as well, and they did, and the sales increased by almost 7% on that, right? Another kind of project that we did was basically for the same client, they wanted to increase the customer interaction from email marketing. Now let me give you a little bit of background about this particular project. So this project we had done when the COVID had struck last year, back in 2020, around March or April, when the lockdown was in full force throughout the entire world, and stores and shops were closed, and for our client, the only mode of revenue was through their online sales. Right, they had to close all their stores, so they wanted to maximize their online revenue, and they were seeing that the revenue that they were generating through their email marketing platform, that was well below the industry standard, right? So they came to us and they asked for our help regarding what they can do and how they can increase their sales through this particular region, right? So what we did is we explored the data. We had data for all the marketing emails that were being sent. So whenever an email was being sent to a particular customer, we had a record for it. Whenever that particular customer was opening that email, we got the corresponding data for it. And also whenever that particular customer was clicking on a creative or on an ad or on a link inside that email, again, that activity got captured, right? And we also had year-over-year sales attributed to email marketing. So in data preparation, what we did is we basically transformed our data to from an email level to a user level. So at a user level, at every customer level, we try to track how many emails were being sent to a particular customer, how many emails were opened by a particular customer, how frequently were they opened, how recently were they opened, and how much revenue each customer was generating, right? And what we did is basically we ranked these customers based on how recently or how frequently they had interacted with these emails, and how much revenue they generated through each email, how much revenue that they generated through the email channel. And then we segmented these customers based on their recency, frequency, and monetary scores, right? And this is a very classic example of an analysis that you can do. No need of modeling over here, no need of machine learning. This is something called RFM analysis, right? And basically it buckets or segments customers, based on it segments customers based on how recently they have interacted with a particular store, how recently they have interacted with how frequently they have interacted with that particular store, and how much value they bring in from each of their orders, right? And as per our recommendations, what we did is we recommended the client to run separate email marketing campaigns for each segment. So we basically bucketed the customers into few segments, right? First segment, let's say one segment is loyal customers. The second segment can be heavy spenders, high spenders. The third segment can be segments where customers are inactive. Fourth segment can be a segment of very frequent customers. So we advise them to run different types of campaigns for each of these groups, right? So why did we do that? Actually, initially what they were doing is they were sending the same campaign for all of their 14 million customers, right? But that won't work, right? So if let's say if you are a person, customer is a very thrifty spender, they don't like to spend that much, they always wait for discounts and everything. If you advertise a very expensive product to them, they will most definitely not even check out your email. They most definitely will not convert, they will not buy. However, if you send that same email to a customer who normally purchases expensive things, they are more likely to purchase it, right? So we advise them to customize their campaigning based on these attributes, these RFM attributes, and send different kinds of basically send different kinds of emails to different types of customers. And they did, and their customer interactions through emails increased almost by 14%, right? Now another project that we had done was it's basically a storytelling project, and the problem statement was that a large handset manufacturer, a large mobile phone manufacturer, they were losing out customers. Customers were churning because one of their handsets was faulty, right? So I'm not going to name the customer name the client for obvious reasons, But this happened back in 2 to 3 years back, and they had to recall most of their handsets back, and they in the process, customers were jumping ship from their brand to different company. So this client, they came to us and they asked us to what suggestion regarding what they can do, what they can do to retain these customers. So what we did is we had data for handset sales across the entire country, and what we did from that is we tried to identify specific users, right, from that particular data. Obviously, we were not able to identify the exact user name and address and telephone number, but we were able to at least identify that, okay, this particular record belongs to one user, and the same user has made another purchase 2 years back, right? So basically, we were able to club transactions for each users. And as a part of analysis, what we did is we analyzed the journey that a particular user has from one handset to the next. So we basically analyzed how they are moving from one mobile phone to the next mobile phone, right? We analyzed how the these customers are flowing from one brand to the next brand, and we analyzed how much loyalty is present among all these customers. And based on these, what we actually found is that users were actually upgrading from this particular handset manufacturer who had problems. Users were actually upgrading to their direct competitors, and they were moving in a straight line. By straight line, I mean that they were opting for similarly priced handsets. So what we recommended them that they did is basically we recommended that they run buyback or exchange offers, wherein a simple exchange offer, when you come back to us and you give back your faulty phones, and with you can just have another phone, a similar phone, or a better phone even for free, right? So we advise them to launch these kind of campaigns, and they did, and the response was that they were able to retain 17% more customers as compared to before. And just to showcase what kind of visualization we had built, this is the kind of visualization which we had built. Now, this is just for representation purpose. This is called a Sankey chart, right? So basically what this represents is how much customer from this particular segment is moving to central, what percentage of customer is moving to east, south, and west. So what we had is basically we had the manufacturers, the handset manufacturers on both these columns, right? And we were trying to see the flow of customers from one manufacturer to the next manufacturer. This is called a flow share analysis, or this is called a Sankey chart, right? And finally, the only machine learning project that I have mentioned over here is a project of extrapolation, which we had done a few years back. And the problem statement was that a wireless service provider wanted to understand how much market share they have in the entire country, right? And why was this a problem? The problem was because the data that we had at hand, it covered only 30% of the country. So let's say that in a particular day, 100 mobiles, or let's say 200 mobiles are being sold in India. We had data which talked about only 60 of those mobile phones sold, right? So for the rest 140, we did not know what or how or when they happened, right? And to understand the market share, we definitely could not go ahead with only 30% of the data in our bank, right? So we wanted to scale that up to 100%. So what we did is we basically built a statistical model which was able to extrapolate 30% of the sales to 100% of the sales. Now, for your interest, it was kind of a variation of a regression model that you might say, and we were able to build it, and we were able to predict the remaining 140 transactions at 93% accuracy, right? And using that, the service provider, they ran campaigns of their own, and they changed their marketing strategy accordingly, and they were able to increase the marketing share by almost 4%, right? So this is basically the kind of projects that you can do in analytics, and mostly in the industry, these are the kind of projects that you would be faced with, right? But that's not all. I also have a few more projects that I wanted to talk about, and these will give you kind of ideas on what type of projects you can take up in your final year. So first and foremost is a very popular problem that you can solve is building recommendation engines, right? You will have data for any kind of sales available at a user level also in websites. So what you can do is you can if you have sales data and if you have all the products data, all the different kinds of products available, now you can analyze the different kinds of items that one person has purchased, and then you can go back to your entire product list and you can recommend what other kinds of items that this person can buy, right? That's a very simple implementation of a recommendation engine, right? Next, what you can do is you can create a model for target marketing, right? Similar to the email marketing project which I was talking about. Most of the companies, they struggle with target marketing, right? So you can help them analyze how they can customize their campaigns to target specific people. You don't even need to build a model for it. Maybe you can simply do something like an RFM analysis or a CLV analysis, the customer lifecycle value analysis, right? And understand which customer falls into which category, and basically create marketing strategies for them. Then you can build something like a market basket analysis, right? So what is a market basket analysis? Any ideas, guys?
In supermarkets, the customer buys items when they are placed together. So if
Right.
someone is buying,
right, that's correct. So market basket analysis is basically clustering. Again, it's a kind of a clustering problem wherein you group dissimilar items into one particular category. Why? Because they fall into that category. Let's take an example. Now,
The data mining.
Pardon?
That can be example of data mining.
This see, data mining is throughout the entire breadth of machine, data science projects. You need to mine data even if you are building a model. If you need to mine data, even if you are doing a market basket or an RFM analysis. So yes, definitely this is a data mining problem, right? So what happens in a market basket analysis is basically, let's say you go into a supermarket and you see that you have eggs and milk and bananas in the same shelf, stacked in the same shelf, right? Now, what is eggs? Eggs is a non-vegetarian item, right? Bananas is a fruit, and milk, it's again a liquid, basically a protein. So what is the logic behind having them in the same shelf in a supermarket? Any ideas?
protein or body.
So protein.
Fair enough. Any other guesses?
Sir, so that someone buys milk will buy the banana as well.
Why will someone who buys milk will buy bananas? What is the
breakfast?
Exactly. Because all these items, they can be consumed for breakfast, right? Eggs, milk, and bananas. That is why you will have a kind of a aisle in supermarkets where they have breakfast supplies, right? They will have all different kinds of things clubbed together. You can have cereals, or you can have bread, and you can have items which are not similar to each other in any way, apart from the fact that all of them are consumed for breakfast, right? So take up any kind of supermarket data that you have, and you can run a market basket analysis, and advise them, or advise the business on how they can cluster their products together, right? Again, you can have you can build a natural language processing model, something like a chatbot, or something like a PDF reader, right? Wherein you basically analyze the, basically implement speech to text functionality, right? You can build a transcriber, something like that, right? Finally, you can also build a forecasting model, right? So there will be a lot of data sets out there where you will have historical data for sales, historical data for profit, historical data for manufacturing units, and the problem statement can be as simple as answering how much do I need to manufacture in the next 1 year to meet with the demand, or how much will my sales be for the next 1 year, right? So you can build a model out which can answer these kind of questions, right? So these are the various kinds of projects that you can target for your final year. But again, what the important thing is, basically, see, you will get data anywhere. Even if you spend 5 minutes on the internet, you will come across with some data set or the other. The most important thing is understanding what is the problem that you're going to solve, right? Because that is what you will be doing when you go out in the industry, when you're working for any organization, right? You will be given with problems, and believe me, you will be given with problems without any context, right? So the companies with the managers will just come to you and say that, hey, my sales are down, do something. That's it. No other why were the sales down, when were the sales down, how can you say that the sales were down? No, nothing. You will be tasked with to do each and every aspect of the analysis yourself, right? So try to understand what problem you are solving, and try to get some background on it, and then approach the problem with the data that you have, right? And where can you look for data? You have a lot of websites. I'm pretty sure that you know all the websites that I have listed over here. Kaggle Analytics, Vidya, freelancing websites like Upwork, Freelancer, right? Then hackathons that many organizations, they perform hackathons. You can get data from that. Then you can get open source data from data.gov. India has a similar portal, data.gov.in. In US, UK, they also have similar portals wherein you have data for almost anything and everything that you can imagine for, right? So for your projects, my advice would be to go through these websites, pick up a data set which you like, right? Don't just randomly pick up a data set. Otherwise, you will lose interest midway. You will not find, might not be able to find a business case that you want to solve, and you might lose interest in solving that, right? So look at maybe 20, 30, 40, even 50, maybe even 100 data sets. Look at them, and the one which talks to you, the one which you find most interesting, pick that up, and just study a little bit about the domain that you're picking up the data from. Let's say if you are picking up healthcare data, right? Just do a little bit of background on healthcare. What are the different kinds of problems that healthcare segment is facing? If you are picking up a banking data, do a little bit of research on what are the new innovations that have happened in banking, right? Or what are the new solutions that banks have come in, like similar to the Bitcoin. That was a very good example, actually. The Bitcoin predicting algorithm, right? So as I said, your problem statement can be as simple as the current algorithms in the market which are predicting your Bitcoin, how your Bitcoin valuation in the future. They're not doing it with a very good efficiency. Now the problem is that how do I find a model which can give me which can predict Bitcoin's valuation with a good enough accuracy, right? So pick up that problem, whichever interests you. Pick up that problem. If you have the data with it, find out the data, or if you don't, find out the data and go about solving it, right? Don't just go into it with a mindset that, okay, I need to build a machine learning model. No, right? If your problem requires a solution which needs to be implemented by machine learning or neural network or deep learning, then fair enough, go ahead. But if your problem is can be solved with simple unsupervised learning, simple clustering, right? Then no need to go into that deep, right? Your main focus should be on solving the problem that business has, because that is what you'll be doing out there in the market as well, right? Now, all this Gyan And to wrap up, I just will tell you what are the skills that you need to acquire, to be a successful data scientist in the market. First and foremost, data mining skills are an absolute must. You need also you need skills in storytelling, which you can get by being good at Tableau or ClickView or Power BI. Then you need to be good at programming as well, right? So basically, pick up any one of the programming languages if you want, Python or R, whatever suits you, right? And be good at it. You don't need to be an expert. No, I myself won't call myself an expert in Python. I can code in Python, but I'm not a Python developer, right? I know, matlab, whatever Python I need to know, I know, and that's that works for me, right? Then you need to be again good in statistics. Definitely, statistics is a must. Machine learning will come along, but statistics, the 5-point summary, the hypothesis testing, these are must. But the most important skill that you need to acquire is the ability to solve problems, the ability to think analytically, right? The ability to empathize with the business owners, to understand what problems they are facing, and also, last again but not the least, a good enough knowledge about the domain that you're working in, right? If you're working in retail, you need to understand the terms and terminologies. You need to understand the KPIs, the key performing indices. You need to understand the metrics. You need to understand basically the background of whatever business you're working for. If you're working in banking, you need to understand the banking terms. If you're working in healthcare, you need to understand how that segment has been for the past 5 to 10 years. So analytical thinking along with domain knowledge is probably the most important skill.
Like Java can be used for data analytics. Sir?
Pardon, sorry.
Java can be used for data analytics. Sir?
Java for data analytics.
Yes, sir.
Can be, but
Spark is using JVM also. Spark.
See, the reason why we use languages like Python or R are because they have libraries which help us in wrangling these data. They have inbuilt libraries that make it very easy for us to slice and dice this data. Java inbuilt it does not have, but if you want to do it in Java, why not? There's nobody stopping you, right? And finally, why should you become a data scientist? Data scientists have a lot of benefit to the businesses that they're working for. They help them, the businesses, deriving insights from their data, taking decisions, researching the market, predicting what will be, what will happen in future, and so on. And that is why data scientist is currently the hottest job of the century, because there are very, very few people who are actually skilled enough to work as a data scientist, right? You will find a lot of people, in LinkedIn and other professional networking sites who write on their resumes that they are data scientists, but 90% of those people cannot even write a proper single SQL query. Right? So to be a data scientist, start from the ground up, right? You are through a process, start from the ground up, understand the basics, then move on to the advanced topics, right? And because it's there are so less people, so less skilled people, the remuneration for those that are skilled are very higher compared to all other kind of job roles. And over here you have opportunities across all domains, like be it banking, healthcare, retail, marketing, insurance. You have opportunities for data science across all the different kinds of domains that are currently present, right? So with that being said, we have come to the end of the session. So I'll just open the floor to any questions that you guys might have for Armugam or me.
Sir, like at Amazon, when we buy something, we get an option of frequently bought together. So is it an example of market basket analysis or recommendation?
So that is that is an example of a recommendation engine.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So every time I join a seminar on data scientist role, I only get to see the data analyst's role. So can you please tell us something about building machine learning models and all the other roles that data scientists have?
Yeah, see, again, coming back to going back to the slide wherein we were, talking about the different kinds of work that a data scientist do. So let me just give you a understanding about what data analyst and data scientist is. Currently in the market, if you see, all these terms have been jumbled up, right? There is no true data scientist or there is no true data analyst in the market. If you go by the bookish definition, a data scientist is a person who only works on, building these kind of machine learning models, right? However, currently in the industry, if you go out and you say that, okay, I can build only machine learning models, very few companies are there which will hire you, right? So as a data scientist, if you look at the job descriptions that are currently, if you just look at Naukri.com or Times Job and LinkedIn, the jobs that are there for in this analytics field, they require you to be a kind of a jack of all trades, right? They require you to be good in SQL, they require you to be good in, Tableau, in Python, and in statistics as well, right? So you cannot really differentiate what a data analyst and a data scientist will do. So currently in this market, you need to have skills in data mining, wherein you need to, do root cause analysis, diagnostic analysis, and you need to be good at storytelling, wherein, dashboarding, reporting, all this comes in. And you also need to be good in statistics and machine learning, right? So there is, the line between data analyst and data scientist currently is very, very, it's almost faded. Did that answer your question?
Can you tell us something about, the phases of building a model and all?
Yeah, so we went through that, right? The life cycles of a data science project. So you have identifying the problem, exploring the data.
Yeah, but this was for data analysis, right?
No. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The line currently between data analysis and data science is very, very blurred, right? You cannot be a, if you go out and say that I'm a data scientist, you will be expected to be able to do everything, starting from writing SQL queries to building a model. So a data science or data analysis product. That's why, wherever I've written, I have simply not written just data science. I've written data science and analytics, if you see. Right. So currently, if you're asking about, the phases of building a model, okay. So again, model building starts with identifying the problem, obviously, getting the data that you have, that you need to solve the problem. And in data preparation part, you need to do functions like, basically filtering out the required data, removing outliers, imputing any missing values, right? And transposing any values, basically squaring up, rooting, taking a logarithm of any kind of values, so that, your values fit on a normal curve. Then you come to modeling. And in modeling, basically what you do is, depends on the type of model that you're building, right? In modeling, you basically start off with a very, let's say you start off with a very basic model, right? Let's say you have a classification problem and you build a logistic regression, but you are not satisfied, right, with the accuracy. Now you again build a decision tree, and again you're saying that it's better than the logistic regression, but I'm still not satisfied. Then you build a neural network, right? Now you're seeing that the neural network, while it works better on 3 out of 5 cases, the remaining 2 cases are correctly better predicted by the logistic and the decision tree. So you work on building an ensemble model now, right, which basically will take inputs from all 3 of these models and predict the output, right? So this is kind of the machine learning steps of a machine learning project that you were talking.
Yeah, but in all those 3 models, we have used already built models, right? But we just fed the data into it, and the model did its work.
Correct.
but we are not making a model by ourselves.
See, if you are trying to build a model out of scratch, then you can definitely do better. Then again, that is something which I have never done in my life. So maybe that's something I would not be able to help you out with. Mostly in the industry, again, coming from the industry perspective, you will not be required to build a model out of scratch. If you are required to build a machine learning model, you would be expected to reuse the components that packages like scikit-learn and these packages offer in Python. Right? So is that what you are asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no, then in that case, I'm sorry, but I will not be able to help you out with that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. I think any other questions, guys, for Armugam and me?
So,
Yes, sir.
Java is still using him for data analytics.
Pardon?
In some companies, maybe. The Java.
See, Java is definitely being used in certain niche projects because the base of Hadoop is built in Java, right?
Yes, sir, Java's framework.
Yeah,
Yes.
Java framework Java is definitely being used because Hadoop is built on Java framework, right? But
Yes.
mostly from an analysis point of view, you would be preferred to use something like R or Python because if
Yeah,
you're
so at later times will be means may replace Java. Python will replace this Java, but in today current years is still the Java data analytics going on.
No. If you're talking about purely about data analysis and then no, Java is very used in very I would say 0.01% of the cases. 99.9% of the cases we are using either Python or R or SAS. Now in some places actually they are using Excel as well. Right? They're not even using any kind of programming languages. But yeah, talking about programming languages, R and Python are currently the most famous languages out there.
Sir, which should be given a highest priority, like a data analyst or like a machine learning engineer?
Highest priority, again, that depends on your interest basically. So are you talking about priority from an employer perspective?
Yeah, I guess yes, sir. Like I have talked to some person, like they always like insults like a data analyst. They say the machine learning is the best. How kind of best data? They
I'm sorry.
equal, sir.
I beg to differ. Basically, there's no such thing as which role will be given per se. The role, there are several roles currently out there in the industry, right? Starting from a developer, a tester, and then your machine learning
So I'm not
engineers.
saying like that, sir. Like for
Yeah,
like if I have a random post, I have taken like a machine learning engineering post.
Let me finish. So all the roles currently out there in the market, they are equally important because if you are a data scientist, if you're a data analyst or an ML engineer, but if you do not have developers or testers out there to build the data for you, where will you work on, right? So there's no such thing as which role is more important. Basically, what you need to do is you need all these fields are good. Yes, definitely certain fields they pay higher, certain roles they pay higher than compared to the others. But if you choose one particular field, be it a developer, be it a tester, or be it a data analyst or a machine learning engineer, if you choose any one of these fields, basically choose the one which you like and excel in that, right? If you choose the one you like and excel in that, that should be self-sufficient, right? That should be sufficient for you. That should be sufficient for any employer that you know in future that you work for, right? So if somebody says that data analyst is not as important as a machine learning engineer, then no, I'm sorry to say that's not the case. All roles are equally important. Right. I will hand over the control to Dr. Stalin now. You're already way past the
Sir, can you
allotted
see the
5
chat,
minutes.
sir?
So I have a
Right.
question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
So what if the source of collecting data is only emails and most of the people ignore them, the emails, then
Yeah.
what will not get the proper conclusion? Then what is the alternative for that?
So basically, let's see, if your source of data collection is email, then you need to ensure that your email creatives are built in a way which ensures that the emails are landing in the primary, inbox of the recipients. That's the first thing that you need to handle, right? Second thing is that now, why do most of the survey emails, and as you are talking about data collection from email, I'm assuming that you're talking about some survey, right? So
Yes, sir.
survey, yeah. So survey emails are, they follow kind of a same pattern. If you think about their subject lines, if you think about their body, they follow the same pattern. And most of us, we just by looking at the email subject, we get to understand that this is a survey, and we don't open that. So you need to come up with a better creative. You need to come up with a catchier, catchier subject line. And if also, if possible, you would be if possible, I would also advise you to go for offline surveys, right? So offline surveys, you can meet people, and you can take collect data from them as well. But to improve your online data collection efficiency, these are the two things: improve your creative and your subject line, and ensure that your emails do not fall into these promotional or spam. They're not being filtered out by the spam filter, right? So I think that will be taken care of if you improve your subject line only, right? They will be taken care of by the spam filter.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. There's one question in the chat. You explained about recommendation system by machine learning, analyzing the user pattern or of buying or seeing. However, recommending some medicine for a patient or food for a customer. See, food for a customer, again, it's a simple, simpler solution. This also will follow similar, kind of similar kind of recommendation engines, which you have for something like Netflix or an Amazon. So basically, what does these recommendation engines do? They basically, try to correlate whatever you have based on your past activity. Based on your past activity, they try to correlate what are the things that you might be interested in, right? So they basically check the correlation of your previous purchases with the rest of the products that they have. So food also, recommending food. Zomato does that, right? Zomato gives us advertisements, or Zomato, based on our previous orders, Zomato recommends us restaurants, right? So that is currently being done using a similar kind of recommendation for similar kind of recommendation engines which are being used for Amazon and Netflix. However, recommending a medicine for a patient, now that is a little bit tricky, and usually I'm not sure if it's done. That's because it involves a lot of regulations, right? So a person can, you need to understand about a person's entire health. He might be allergic to some kind of medicine, right? He might have some other ailments that due to which he cannot consume one kind of medications, right? So all these kind of rules and regulations, all these kind of things come into picture, which makes it difficult for us to recommend medicines for a patient. Ideally, no medication should be taken without the consultation of a doctor, right? So that's why ethically, and I also don't think it's correct. Okay.
So there is any difference between like a data profiling or data mining?
Pardon? Can you come again, please?
So any difference between like a data profiling, data mining?
Data profiling and data mining. No, I would say they are similar, basically. Anything that requires you to dig deep into your data is basically data mining. Data profiling is basically just looking at analyzing or going through the data sets, right? So that in itself can constitute as data mining practice as well. Okay, I would now hand over the control of the session to Arumugam and Dr. Stalin. Arumugam?
Yeah, Ritra, thank you. Thanks a lot for your insightful session. It was really useful. I believe the students also got some inputs from our session. And if you guys wanted to get in touch with us, and if you are doing some projects, and if you want any help, feel free to reach us through Dr. your HODs. So we'll be able to help you. And yeah, as not only data science, if you wish to do anything on like development side or like full stack DevOps or big data, feel free to reach us. Okay. So yeah, that's all from our end.
Stalin, sir?
Yeah, Meghna, you want to share something?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to thank the speakers on behalf of all the students. Thank you very much for this really insightful session. We got to learn a lot. And and also, sir, I have a few more thank yous to give away. So, Stalin, sir, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to learn and organize this event. And I would also like to thank our team of coordinators and volunteers, all from the second and final year. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arumugam sir, and thank you, Aritra sir, once again. That's it, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I just want to end the session with one question. So I believe that the objective of this session was basically to help you, the fourth year students, to to guide them basically to choose their final year projects, right? So the session that we went through, just wanted to a small feedback on, did it help you guys? Were you able to learn something, or were we talking about mostly the stuff that you already knew? Just wanted a small feedback.
We clear our doubts.
Okay.
It was really.
It was very helpful, sir. We had actually narrowed down all of our projects, but now it has given us a little more of an insight as to which direction the project has to go in. So thank you.
So glad to hear that. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, students. And first, I want to thank our resource persons, Arita Banerjee and Arumugam, those people who kindly accepted our invitation. And mainly, I want to thank Menaga because she is the backbone of this one. So she has organized very well, and his team. So Meghna coordinate with your friends and the team, and she come up with a beautiful thing. All right, and I mean, so many students, they ask a lot of questions. It is very useful for your juniors also. So thank you so much, sir. Both of you, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
So I end the session now. Please take a break, and later you can attend your regular classes, dear students. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.